The Galactic Council sat in solemn judgment. Their members from countless alien civilizations had gathered in their colossal floating chamber on the outskirts of a dying star. The sheer magnitude of their collective power was overwhelming. Yet they knew what had to be done. Earth had proven to be a problem for centuries. Ever since humans had begun to explore beyond their own planet, their rise was too fast, their aggression too unpredictable, their ambition too dangerous for the delicate balance the Council had crafted over millennia. The decision was unanimous. The humans would be ranked at the lowest tier of galactic society. It was a symbolic gesture to remind the young species of their place in the grand order of the galaxy. Earth would be isolated from the greater interstellar community, its people given only the barest minimum of contact with other species, but no direct involvement, no participation in the galactic politics that had shaped the universe for eons. The council members exchanged knowing glances as they watched the human delegation depart from the chamber, their leaders unaware of the decree just passed, and as they left the chamber their faces betrayed a mixture of defiance and confusion. The humans did not yet understand the full weight of their decision, but the council was certain they would soon come to realize their mistake. Yet within the shadows of Earth, something was stirring. Not all humans had accepted their fate. In fact, a small but powerful faction had been growing unnoticed by the galactic powers, an organization dedicated to proving the worth of humanity to the galaxy. It had been born in the heart of Earth's most advanced nations and had quickly spread to the fringes of society. Its leaders were a mix of brilliant scientists, renegade soldiers, and strategic minds who had long seen the Council's judgment as the first step in a long war to assert humanity's place among the stars. Keira Stahl was their leader, and she was not someone easily dismissed. Born on Earth's struggling frontier worlds, she had seen firsthand the resilience and ingenuity of the human spirit. She had risen through the ranks of the military academy and quickly became a tactical genius with a sharp mind for both warfare and diplomacy. But it was her vision that set her apart. While the Council saw humans as unworthy, Keira saw a species poised to take its place as equals in the galactic order. When the Council made their move to lock humanity away in isolation, Keira saw it as the final insult. She knew the Council had underestimated humanity's potential. They thought humans were just a blip, a flash of violence and chaos in the larger cosmic story. But Keira believed humanity was destined for something greater, something beyond the reach of the Council's limited understanding. In secret, she began to gather resources. She found allies within the Council's own ranks, those who were disillusioned with the current state of affairs. She found sympathetic alien races that saw the truth. In her words, the humans were not a threat, they were a force of nature, a species capable of learning, adapting, and most importantly, surviving. Keira's vision was clear: humanity would rise above their enemies and prove that their potential was limitless. Her first step was to obtain the ancient alien technology hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth for centuries. It had been dormant, forgotten by all but a few. Now it was ready to be awakened. Keira was certain that this was the key to humanity's ascent. Once the power of this alien tech was in her hands, there would be no stopping her or humanity's destiny. And so, in the darkness of Earth's hidden caverns, the first steps toward the future began. Keira Stahl had made her move. The galaxy would soon learn that underestimating humanity was the greatest mistake it could ever make. Keira stood in the control room of the underground facility. The hum of machinery filled the air as technicians worked frantically around her. The tension was palpable as they prepared to activate the ancient alien technology hidden for centuries beneath the surface of Earth. It was a relic far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, and Keira knew that once it was unlocked, everything would change for humanity. The artifact was massive, a shimmering crystalline structure buried deep beneath the Earth's crust. It had been discovered only a few months ago after years of secret research by a small group of scientists that Keira had personally handpicked. The Council had no idea it existed, no inkling of the power humanity was about to uncover. They thought Earth was nothing more than a backwater planet, but they had no idea what lay beneath their feet. As the final sequence initiated, Keira's heart raced. The room was bathed in a soft glow as the ancient technology began to hum to life. Strange symbols appeared across the walls of the cavern, as though the structure itself was waking up from a long slumber. The team had spent countless hours studying the artifact and deciphering its code, but now it was clear that there was something far more sophisticated at work than they could have ever imagined. The ground shook lightly as the energy from the relic surged through the facility's systems. Keira watched as the data on the screens began to flash rapidly. An overwhelming stream of information was flooding in. The technology was far beyond anything she could have hoped for. Its power was unlike anything humans had ever seen. This was not just a weapon, it was a gateway to a new era of human advancement. Keira realized the possibilities were endless. With this technology, humanity could push beyond their current limits. The Council had made a fatal mistake in underestimating them. They had assumed that humanity would always be weak and primitive, but now they would see just how wrong they were. The team continued to work, but Kira's mind was already racing with the implications of what they had just uncovered. This was more than just a weapon. It was a declaration to the galaxy that humanity would no longer be ignored, that they had the power to rise up and challenge the established order. Kira's vision was clear. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. Humanity would dominate. They would carve out their place in the stars, and the galaxy would have no choice but to accept them. As the facility's systems continued to power up, Keira turned to one of her most trusted officers, a former military strategist named Captain Jace Rourke. He was standing beside her, staring at the screens. His face was serious, but there was a spark of excitement in his eyes. "We've done it," Jace said, his voice low, but filled with awe. Keira nodded slowly. "This is just the beginning." She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The path ahead would be dangerous. The Galactic Council would not take kindly to what they had just unleashed, but Keira was ready. She knew that humanity's time had come. They had the technology, they had the willpower, and most importantly, they had the drive to prove that they belonged among the stars. "Prepare the fleet," Keira commanded, her voice steady and filled with resolve. "It's time to make our move." The officers around her looked up with determination, their faces set in grim lines. They knew what was at stake. This was no longer about just surviving the Council's judgment. It was about taking control of their own destiny and showing the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As Keira turned to leave the control room, she looked back at the relic one final time. A surge of confidence coursed through her veins. Humanity would no longer be ignored. The galaxy was about to see the true potential of the human race, and they would have no choice but to respect it. The fleet was ready. The ships gleamed under the harsh lights of the launch bays. As Keira surveyed the scene from the command deck, the hum of the engines echoed through the massive hangar. Each ship was equipped with newly reverse-engineered alien technology taken directly from the relic, humanity's first true fleet, and it was ready to break free from Earth's atmosphere for the first time in history. Keira stood at the helm, her crew behind her, their eyes filled with a mix of excitement and fear, but above all determination. They knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a mission, it was a statement to the galaxy, a statement that humanity would not be confined to the lower rungs of galactic society. They had power now, and they would show it. "Captain Stahl," a voice called out from behind her. It was Commander Ilara Vos, one of her most trusted officers. "All ships are primed and ready for launch." Keira turned to face her with a small nod. "Good," she said, her voice steady, but carrying the weight of what they were about to do. "Initiate launch sequence." A ripple of excitement ran through the command center as the countdown began. The ships around them powered up and began to lift off the ground one by one. Kira's mind raced with anticipation. She had planned this for months, each move carefully calculated, but there was no turning back now. They were about to make their presence known to the galaxy, and they had no idea how the Council would react or what dangers awaited them. The ships ascended through Earth's atmosphere, breaking through the clouds and into the void of space. Their destination was a distant planet, a desolate world that had long been under the control of the Galactic Council. But it wasn't just about the planet itself, it was the Council's operation there that Keira wanted to expose. The Council had been using this remote world to secretly mine resources vital to their war efforts. Keira intended to stop them, to show that humanity would not stand idly by while the Council exploited the galaxy's weaker species. The fleet moved in silence. As they approached the target world, Keira felt the weight of the moment settle over her. They were about to strike the first blow in a war they hadn't even fully prepared for. But there was no turning back now. The fleet's sensors began to pick up activity around the planet. Several council ships were in orbit, but they were unprepared for what was coming. "Launch all fighters," Keira ordered, her voice cool and calm despite the chaos that was about to unfold. The fighter ships darted out of the fleet's hangars like a swarm of angry hornets, their engines roaring to life as they formed into tight formations, moving swiftly toward the council's ships overhead. Keira watched the tactical display as her fleet closed in on their targets. The battle was about to begin. The first shots were fired. A massive explosion rocked the enemy fleet. As the human fighters launched their first assault, the council ships scrambled to respond, but they were outmatched. Keira had anticipated this. The council had grown complacent over the centuries. They hadn't expected a human fleet to rise up so quickly, and with such ferocity. The battle unfolded in a flurry of flashing lights and violent impacts as humanity's ships tore through the council's defenses. Keira gritted her teeth. As she watched the chaos unfold, she could feel the adrenaline pumping through her veins. This was just the beginning. The council would not let this attack go unanswered. They would retaliate with everything they had. But humanity had proven one thing tonight: they were capable of more than anyone had ever given them credit for. As the final enemy ship exploded in a burst of flame, Keira allowed herself a moment to breathe. But there was no time to rest. The fleet had made its mark. And now the council would know they had been wrong to underestimate the humans. "Prepare for the next phase," Keira ordered, her eyes cold and determined. "We've only just begun." The fleet drifted silently through the vast emptiness of space. After the battle, the hum of the engines and the distant crackle of communications were the only sounds breaking the stillness. Keira stood in the command center, her gaze fixed on the stars outside the observation windows. Her mind was already racing ahead to the next step. They had won a victory, but it was only the beginning. The council would not take this defeat lightly. Keira knew they would retaliate, and they would come at them with everything they had. The strike they had just executed was a bold move, a move that would send shockwaves through the galaxy. But Keira had calculated every possible outcome. She was ready for what was coming next. Her officers were already preparing for the next phase of their plan. Commander Vos approached her with a report in hand, her face unreadable. "As always, Captain, our initial strike has gained attention from several factions," she said, handing over the data. Keira took the report without a word, scanning through it as she absorbed the information. "The Remnants," Keira muttered after a moment's pause. They were one of the factions that had been watching humanity from the shadows, the group of alien races that had quietly opposed the council for years. Their influence was growing, but they were scattered and disorganized. Their numbers were small, but their reach was vast. They had been waiting for an opportunity to strike. And now it seemed they saw humanity as the catalyst to finally challenge the council's power. "What are they offering?" Keira asked, her voice low with curiosity. Vos hesitated for a moment before answering. "They've reached out. They want to form an alliance. They believe humanity's victory will give them the leverage they need to move against the council." She paused again. "They want us to lead the charge." Keira looked out at the stars, her mind spinning. She had expected the Remnants to make contact eventually, but this was sooner than anticipated. They had not only fought against the council for years, but had also been quietly gathering strength on the fringes of known space. They had access to resources and knowledge that could prove invaluable in the coming conflict, but forming an alliance with them would be a gamble. If the Remnants could be trusted, they could tip the balance of power in humanity's favor. But if they were unreliable, the alliance could tear them apart from the inside. Keira weighed the options carefully. The stakes were too high to make a hasty decision. "We'll meet with them," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "Arrange the coordinates for a rendezvous. I'll go personally." Vos gave a sharp nod and quickly relayed the orders to the fleet. Keira turned back to the window, her eyes narrowing as she considered the path ahead. The galaxy was about to change and humanity would be at the center of it all. But Keira knew she couldn't do it alone. The Remnants were a key part of the plan, and whether or not they could be trusted remained to be seen. The fleet adjusted course and set off toward the coordinates. The rendezvous was scheduled for a distant nebula far from Council-controlled space, a place where secret meetings could be held without interference. But Keira knew that even in the quiet of the nebula, they would be walking into unknown territory. The galaxy was a volatile place, and trust was a rare commodity. As the fleet approached the nebula, Keira stood once again in the command center watching as the stars blurred into a cloud of gas and dust. Their destination was within reach, but as the nebula grew closer, she could feel the weight of the coming negotiations. The next phase of their rebellion would be decided here with the Remnants. But what would it cost her to gain their trust? What would she have to sacrifice to forge an alliance strong enough to take down the Council? The answer was uncertain, but Keira Stahl was not the kind of leader to shy away from risk. If humanity was to rise, they would need to take bold steps into the unknown, no matter the consequences. The nebula loomed ahead, a swirling mass of gas and dust, its colorful clouds glowing faintly against the vast emptiness of space. Keira stood at the front of the command center, her eyes locked on the swirling chaos of the nebula outside the window. The rendezvous point was close now, just moments away. She could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on her. This alliance with the Remnants was their next big gamble. It could either propel humanity to greatness or pull them into a war they weren't ready for. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates." Commander Voss said, her voice steady, but there was an edge of anticipation in it as well. "We should be within range of their signal any moment." Keira nodded without saying a word, her gaze never leaving the nebula ahead, the stars around them slowly fading into the deep fog of the gas cloud. As they entered the area of turbulence within it, the sensors began to flicker slightly as the interference from the nebula began to distort their readings. But Keira was prepared for this. The Remnants had told them to expect this. It was a way to shield themselves from Council detection. "Lock onto their signal," Keira ordered, her voice sharp, her mind still focused on the task at hand. "We don't have much time." The crew worked swiftly, tapping commands into the consoles around them, their eyes trained on the data screens. "Signal locked, Captain," one of the officers called out. "They're sending a response request for a secure channel." Keira took a deep breath and nodded. "Open the channel." The screen flickered to life, revealing the image of a tall alien figure, its features hard to make out in the dim lighting of the nebula. The figure was humanoid, but with several distinct differences. Its skin was a deep shade of blue, almost black, with ridges along its cheeks and sharp, glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the dim light. "Keira Stahl." The alien spoke, its voice smooth but filled with authority. "I am Valak, the leader of the Remnants. We've been waiting for you." Keira studied Valak carefully. She knew the Remnants were dangerous and calculating, but they had something she needed. Their forces could help turn the tide against the Council, and she couldn't afford to let mistrust cloud her judgment. "Now, I'm here to discuss our future," Keira replied, keeping her tone steady. "If we're going to stand against the Council, we need a strong and reliable alliance." Valak's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, as if considering her words. "An alliance will cost you much more than you may be willing to pay, Captain," it said, its voice colder now. "The Council will not sit idly by as we rise against them. You will be targeted the moment our forces move against them." Keira didn't flinch. She knew the stakes. "We're already targeted," she said firmly. "The Council is coming for us, whether we ally with you or not. And I don't intend to hide. I'm here to offer humanity's hand in leadership. Together, we can build a new galaxy, one where the Council's reign ends, and the Remnants have a place among the stars." She paused, locking eyes with Valak. "We will be a force that cannot be ignored." Valak remained silent for a long moment, the tension between them thick as 1,000 thoughts seemed to pass through the alien's mind before it spoke again. "Humanity has surprised us before, Captain. You have the potential to be an ally worth having," it said, its tone shifting slightly. "But if you fail us or betray us, your people will be wiped out without mercy." It leaned forward ever so slightly, its glowing eyes now sharper than before. "Do not mistake this for an offer of friendship. This is a pact forged in the fires of war, and we do not forget those who break their word." Keira met Valak's gaze without hesitation. "I don't plan on breaking my word," she replied, her voice unwavering. "And I don't expect you to either." There was a long silence, then VLX's lips curled into something resembling a smile. "Then let us see what your people are truly capable of." It said, "The Remnants stand with you, Keira Stahl, but remember our alliance will be tested in ways you can't yet imagine." Keira nodded, and the transmission cut off as quickly as it had started. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air. The alliance was official now, but the cost of it still loomed large in her mind. As the fleet continued its path through the nebula, Keira knew that the battle ahead would be unlike anything they had faced so far, and the galaxy was about to be torn apart in ways no one could predict. "Prepare the fleet for the next phase," Keira said, turning to Vos, her voice steady. "We've got a war to win." The fleet surged forward with a unified determination. As Keira stood before the command deck, her mind sharp and focused. The transmission from the Council had been a warning, but Keira wasn't deterred. Their threats only fueled her resolve. The battle was coming, and humanity was ready to face it head-on. The crew worked efficiently around her, preparing for the largest operation humanity had ever undertaken. The weight of their future hung in the balance, and there was no turning back now. Keira turned to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Dorian, a young but brilliant strategist whose quick thinking had already saved them more times than she could count. "Lieutenant, are our forces in position?" she asked, her voice low but commanding. Dorian nodded without hesitation, his eyes glued to the holographic map that projected their fleet's movements. "All ships are in position, Captain. We've got the Remnants advancing on the Council's outer defense line. The Council's fleet has been pulled to the edge of their space to respond to them, but they're not expecting us to strike so quickly." Keira's mind processed the information swiftly. This was it. The Council was exposed, and they were about to hit them where they were most vulnerable. "Initiate the first wave," she said, her voice sharp. The calm before the storm settled around her as she prepared to lead her people into battle. The command was sent, and the first wave of humanity's fleet surged forward, the ships breaking through the darkness of space like an unstoppable force, their engines burning bright as they headed straight for the Council's weak point in their outer defenses. The battle would begin in just moments. As the fleet approached the edge of Council territory, the tension in the air became palpable. Keira could feel her heart beat in her chest. The cold void of space surrounding them on all sides, the unknown of what they were about to face weighing heavily on her. But she remained steadfast. Their mission was clear: hit hard, hit fast, and make the Council understand that humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. "Enemy ships detected on the far side, Captain," Dorian said, his voice breaking the silence. "The Council is mobilizing their fleet faster than we anticipated." He paused for a moment before adding, "It's going to be a full-on engagement." Keira's eyes narrowed. She had known the Council wouldn't let this go easily, but she hadn't expected them to act so quickly. "All ships prepare for combat," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We'll take the fight to them. We're not backing down now." The first shots rang out as the human fleet clashed with the Council's forces. The stars around them lit up with explosions as both sides engaged in a deadly dance of firepower and strategy. Keira watched the battle unfold on the tactical display, her ships moving with precision as they executed their carefully planned maneuvers, each strike hitting with deadly accuracy. The Remnants were in position now too, their forces joining the fray in a chaotic storm of fire and fury. They were a powerful ally, their ships moving with a savage elegance as they tore through the Council's ranks. But Keira knew that this battle was far from one the Council would fight to the bitter end, and the humans and their allies would have to give everything they had if they were to stand a chance. "Captain, we've lost contact with the forward fleet," Vos said suddenly, her face tense with concern. "They've been overwhelmed by a counterattack. We're going to need reinforcements, or we'll lose the momentum." Keira's mind raced. There was no time to waste. She couldn't afford to lose this battle, not after everything they had sacrificed. "Redirect the second wave to reinforce them," she commanded without missing a beat. "We hold this position no matter the cost." The tension in the command deck grew as the battle continued to rage, on the screen flashing with the red lights of alerts and damage reports. But Keira didn't flinch. She stayed focused, her mind calculating every move the Council might make, her hand steadied as she gave orders one after the other, the crew around her moving with deadly efficiency. This was humanity's moment to rise to prove to the galaxy that they were not to be trifled with, that they had a place among the stars, and they would carve it with blood and fire. If necessary, the Council had underestimated them. But now they would see the true strength of humanity. "Push forward," Keira said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're not stopping until the Council knows they've made the biggest mistake of their existence." The battle raged on around them, the vacuum of space, filled with the roar of explosions and the bright flashes of energy beams cutting through the dark. Keira stood at the heart of the command deck, her eyes locked on the tactical display. As her fleet engaged the Council's forces, the sound of her crew working in unison was a constant hum in the background, their movements fast, precise, like clockwork. The Remnants were making their mark, as well, their ships darting through the chaos like shadows with unmatched speed and ferocity. But even with their combined strength, Keira knew the Council's fleet was vast and powerful, and they would not back down easily. "Enemy reinforcements have arrived," Lieutenant Dorian called out, his voice tinged with concern. "Their flagship is entering the battlefield, and it's enormous." Keira's heart skipped a beat. She knew the Council's flagships were symbols of their power, the heart of their military operations. If they could break this ship, it would send a message to the entire Council that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. But if they lost it, their momentum could be shattered, and the tide of the battle could quickly turn. "Target their flagship," Keira ordered, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "All ships converge on that vessel. We cripple it now, or we lose everything." The fleet responded immediately, the ships of humanity and the Remnants adjusting their formation to focus all firepower on the Council's flagship. The massive vessel loomed in space ahead, its surface bristling with weapons and defensive shields. But Keira knew they had one advantage. The Council didn't expect humanity to be so bold, to fight so fiercely, and that's what would give them their chance. The first volley of fire from humanity's fleet struck the flagship's shields, a massive explosion rocking the ship, but the shields held strong. Keira's grip tightened on the railing in front of her. She could feel the pressure of the moment bearing down on her. If they couldn't break through the shields, soon they would be overwhelmed. "Captain, the flagship is retaliating," Vaz said, her voice strained as she looked at the incoming data. "They're deploying heavy fighters, and their weapons are charging up for a full assault." Keira's eyes never left the display, her mind calculating their next move. They couldn't afford to let the flagship unleash its full power. They needed to neutralize it fast, and with minimal losses. "Launch all remaining fighters," she ordered. "We'll create a diversion and force their weapons systems offline. Hit them hard and fast while they're distracted." The fighter ships surged into space in a wave, their engines roaring as they scattered across the battlefield, distracting the enemy and drawing fire from the flagship's massive guns. It was a dangerous move, but one that Keira knew would buy them enough time to break the Council's defenses. As the fighters engaged in the chaos of dogfights around the flagship, Keira's fleet pressed forward, launching everything they had left. The combined firepower of the human ships and the Remnants hammered the Council's flagship, weakening its defenses bit by bit. The tactical display showed the damage slowly mounting, shields faltering, critical systems failing. The flagship was no longer untouchable, and Keira's resolve hardened. "We're making progress," Dorian reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Their shields are down to 30%. We're closing in on the core." Keira felt a surge of adrenaline course through her veins, but she knew they couldn't get overconfident. The Council would fight until the bitter end. "Keep pushing," she ordered. "We're taking that ship down today." The battle continued to intensify as the human fleet worked in perfect unison. Fighters swarming, larger ships attacking with precision strikes. Keira's eyes were fixed on the flagship's core. The Council's flagship wasn't just a vessel. It was a symbol of their dominance over the galaxy, and Keira wasn't going to let it stand any longer. As the final barrage hit the flagship's exposed core, the ship shuddered under the force of the explosion. The massive vessel's central reactor ignited in a blinding flash, sending shockwaves through space. Keira's breath caught in her throat as she watched the flagship break apart, its enormous form disintegrating in a cascade of debris. The victory was hard-earned, and the price of it would be high. But Keira felt a sense of triumph fill her chest. The Council had suffered its first major defeat, and humanity had delivered it. The galaxy was on notice now. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were warriors, and they were taking their place among the stars. The explosion of the Council's flagship sent ripples through the galaxy, a signal that could not be ignored. Keira stood in the midst of the command deck, watching as the debris scattered in the void. Her heart pounded in her chest. The victory was hard won, but it was just the beginning. The battle was far from over, and the Council would not let this loss slide quietly. The enemy fleet was still regrouping, and their fury would be unimaginable. "Captain, the flagship is down," Dorian reported, his voice filled with both relief and caution. "We've struck a serious blow, but their other forces are now moving in to retaliate." He paused. "It's going to be an all-out war from here on out." Keira's eyes never left the tactical display. The Council's remaining fleet was quickly reorganizing and moving to counter the losses they'd suffered. Their ships were massive and powerful, but they had just seen that even the mightiest vessel could fall if struck with precision and force. Keira wasn't about to let up now. This was the turning point, the moment that humanity would either rise to its full potential or be crushed under the weight of the Council's power. "Redirect all remaining fighters to take out their command ships," Keira ordered, her voice cold and commanding. "We focus on their leadership first. We take out their ability to command and organize." Va's eyes flicked across the battlefield as she quickly relayed the orders. "Understood, Captain. We're adjusting our course now." Keira turned her attention back to the communication screen, where a new message was coming through. It was from the Remnants. Their leader, Velak's face appeared on the screen, his glowing eyes piercing through the dim light of space. "Keira Stahl," he said, his tone both cold and impressed. "You've done it. You've struck a significant blow to the Council, and now they will come for you with everything they have." He paused. "But we are ready to support you in the final push. We have prepared our forces for this moment." Keira felt a spark of hope, but she didn't let her guard down. The Remnants were powerful, but they were also unpredictable. "We still have a long way to go," she said flatly. "The Council won't go down without a fight, and neither will I." Velak's eyes narrowed slightly. "You understand the consequences of this war better than most, Captain. But if you do not stop the Council now, they will hunt you down with every resource at their disposal. The galaxy will be torn apart, and your people will be eradicated," he said, his voice like ice. "Your victory here will mean nothing if you do not finish what you started." Keira didn't flinch. She had already made her decision, and no matter what Velak said, she wasn't backing down. "We'll finish it," she said firmly, "and humanity will be the ones to write the new future of this galaxy." The transmission cut off, and Keira turned back to the map, her mind racing with plans and strategies. There was no time to waste. The Council would soon regroup and launch a counteroffensive. They were already gathering reinforcements, and Keira knew that a final confrontation was inevitable. This would be the last battle the galaxy would ever witness, a war of unprecedented scale, where the future of every species was at stake. Captain Dorian's voice broke through her thoughts. "We've received word from the outer colonies. They're mobilizing support. The message from our victory is spreading," he said. "The Council's control is beginning to fracture. They can't hold their grip for much longer." Keira smiled for the first time in what felt like days. The message was clear. Humanity had struck fear into the heart of the Council, and now the galaxy was awakening to the possibility of a new order. But it was not enough. They had to press on. They had to finish what they started and bring the Council to its knees. "Prepare the fleet for the final push," Keira ordered, her voice filled with determination. "We take this fight to their heart. We break them once and for all." The crew moved swiftly, responding to her command. The fleet was ready to make its move, and humanity was poised to take control of its destiny at long last. They would no longer be the lowest-ranked species in the galaxy, no longer the ones to be ignored. Humanity had proven its strength, and now they would show the galaxy what it meant to face the might of a united and determined species. The Council would learn the price of underestimating humanity, and they would pay for every life lost in this war. The final push was upon them. The fleet moved like a storm through the galaxy, each ship a blade cutting through the void. Keira stood before the command deck, once more her gaze fixed on the vast expanse of space ahead of them. Their target was within reach, the Council's capital world, a planet of immense strategic importance, where their leadership resided, the heart of the Council's power. They had stripped the Council of their command ships, shattered their outer defenses, and now it was time to finish what they had started. "Captain, the fleet is in position," Dorian reported, his voice steady, but laced with the same urgency that filled the air around them. "We've got a clear path to the Council's capital, but their forces are already waiting for us." He glanced at the tactical screen where hundreds of Council ships were positioned in orbit, ready to defend their last stronghold. "They'll fight to the last ship." Keira didn't flinch. She knew what was at stake. They had made it this far, and there was no turning back now. The Council's leadership would either fall or humanity would be crushed beneath their boots. She turned to Vos, who stood by her side, her face set in a grim expression. "We can't let them regroup," Keira said softly. "All ships focus fire on their command centers. We can't give them a chance to rally their forces." Vos nodded. "Understood, Captain. We're launching the final assault now." The fleet surged forward into the heart of the Council's last defense. The space around the capital planet became a war zone. The sky lit up with the explosions of energy weapons as the Council's fleet opened fire on the advancing human forces. But Keira's ships pressed on undeterred, their weapons blazing as they tore through the Council's lines. The Remnants fought alongside them, their ships weaving through the chaos with deadly grace, hitting hard and fast like phantoms in the dark. Keira watched as the enemy fleet was broken apart, one piece at a time. The Council's forces were no longer a united front. They were disorganized, desperate, and Keira knew this was the moment the tide would turn. She had expected resistance, but not like this. Their leadership was fractured, their confidence shattered, and soon the humans would take the victory. "Captain, we're nearing the Council's flagship," Dorian said, his eyes wide with anticipation. "Their central command ship is within firing range." "Target their engines," Keira commanded without hesitation. "Take them out, and they won't be able to escape or retaliate." The human fleet fired with brutal precision, the flagship shuddering under the onslaught. As its engines were destroyed in a series of devastating explosions, the once mighty vessel faltered, its shields flickering and weakening under the continuous barrage. Keira's eyes locked on the ship's exposed core. The final strike would end the war. "Captain, the flagship is down," Vos reported, her voice breaking through the sounds of battle. "The Council's forces are in full retreat. Their leadership is in disarray." Keira allowed herself a moment to breathe as the news sank in. They had done it. The Council had been broken and humanity had won, but the cost had been great. Their fleet was damaged, and their allies were fewer than they had hoped, but the victory was theirs, and with it came the promise of a new beginning. The galaxy would never be the same again. Keira knew that this war had changed everything. Humanity had proven its strength, its resolve, and its place among the stars. They were no longer the lowest-ranked species. They were now the ones in charge, the ones to shape the future of the galaxy. The Council had underestimated them, but humanity had shown its true power. Keira stood tall as the final transmission from the Council was sent across the stars. Their surrender had been final and undeniable. The galaxy would move forward into a new era, one where humanity would lead the way as the rightful rulers of their own destiny, and Keira Stahl would be the one to lead them into that new age.